So let's now go back to the new item.dart file and replace this text placeholder widget here with that form we want to add. Now, a form is simply a combination of input fields, and in Flutter there is a built-in form widget which you can use to build such a combination of input fields. Now, of course, we already handled user input before in this course, and we did that without using that form. So clearly we don't need to use a form in Flutter to display multiple input elements and get some user input. But using this form widget comes with some extra features that can help with getting that user input, validating that user input, showing on-screen validation errors, and so on. That's why you might want to use it, especially for more complex input field combinations. So here we can create such a form by using the form widget. And as you see, I'm getting an error when adding it like this. I'm getting an error that I must add the child parameter. And that must be added because the child parameter ultimately will control or will define which widgets are inside of the form. And here you can use any widgets you already know. For example, the column widget, since I will have multiple rows of inputs in this form. So we can still use the column widget as we did it many times before in this course. Therefore, here on column, we can set the children parameter, and this then takes our different rows in the end, the different widgets that should be displayed above each other. And here I want to start with an input field that allows the user to enter the name, the title of a new grocery list item. And before in this course, in the expense tracker app, for example, we did that by using the TextField widget. This is a widget we can use for displaying an input field where users can type and enter some values. Now, when using the form widget, you should instead use the TextFormField widget. So instead of TextField, which we used before, it should now be TextFormField because this is a widget that integrates with that form widget and this set of features provided by form, and therefore it's TextFormField that should be used here. And if you just type form here and you open this suggestion menu, you will actually see that as you scroll down, you find many other widgets that are meant to be used inside of a form, like this drop-down button form field widget, which would be the form alternative to the drop-down button we learned about earlier in this course. So we have these form-specific input widgets like TextFormField, which are meant to be used inside of a Flutter form and which simply support the different features provided by the form widget. But with TextFormField added like this, we can still configure it. And you can, for example, still set the max length parameter, which you saw earlier in the course on the TextField widget already. We can set it to 50 to make sure that we don't allow titles or names that are longer than 50 characters. We can also still add the decoration parameter, which we saw earlier in the course, and set this to an input decoration object, where we, for example, add a label. So this also does not change. We can add a label of name here, and this should be a const value. And the label should actually be text widget here of name in this case. So these fields can still be added, and if you open this suggestion menu by pressing Ctrl Space, you will see that many of the parameters you see here were also available on TextField. But there also are some special parameters available. For example, the validator parameter. The validator parameter allows you to add a function to this text form field, which takes a string value as an input, a value that will be produced and passed in automatically by Flutter, and which then also returns a string value, a value defined by you. So here we can add a function, an anonymous function in this case, for example, which automatically receives a value, which will be of type string or null, and which then should return a string value. And the idea behind adding this validator parameter with this validator function is that you will be able to tell Flutter when this function should be executed because you're inside of a form. And as you will see later, you will therefore be able to tell Flutter when to validate this form. And when Flutter then calls this function, you can return an error message if validation fails. So if you determine that an invalid value has been entered into this form field, and Flutter would automatically display this error message which you are returning here, or which you might be returning here, on the screen after it ran validation. And you'll see this again later. At the moment, I'll just return demo here, and at the moment, we actually won't call this validation at any point of time, but I will get back to this later. But that is one of the new parameters you can add now. And I am mentioning this right now already because it is important to understand that TextFormField is basically an extended version of the regular text field that provides extra features like validator, which in the end are enabled by form. So that's how you can add such a text form field. And I will get back to validator later as mentioned. But this is of course not all I want to add to this form. So let's continue.